Good evening. Hello. Welcome everyone to Villiers House. We're absolutely delighted to have you here. When we moved our business into this building, one of our aims was to make sure that we shared not only the roof garden, but the area that we have with charities. So we're delighted to have Max Wildlife Trust here with us. Growing out of calculating, I think 4 years ago, we probably started working together. And that culminated in having the wonderful community ranger Hannah starting with this year, which we're supporting. So we hope to do lots more exciting initiatives with you. We love working with you. I'm very proud of the relationship. I have to do something boring. So before we start with Simon, there's no fire alarm test scheduled for this evening. So if an alarm does go off, Mandy and I'll be here to escort you to the exit. One at the very rear of the building and one on the left. And the meeting point is within Villiers Square. So enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, there's a couple of chairs if you want to. There was a save you sitting on the table. Welcome everybody to the 49th annual general meeting of Manx Wildlife Trust. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Simon. Simon Kane. I was elected a chair in the spring to take office on the 1st of May by a committee formed for that purpose to follow in the footsteps of Viv Davis, Viv's here. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say to Viv, thank you so much for, I can't see where she is, here we are. Thank you so much for all the work. I took on a role for an organisation in fantastic shape with excellent corporate governance, a fantastic reputation, both locally on the island with government and many other organisations, and also within the wider Wildlife Trust network. We have a fantastic reputation. We're one of the minnows of the wildlife trusts, but we are very well respected and regarded. And I know that from first hand, having met lots of other CEOs and chairs of the wildlife trusts at a conference about 6 weeks ago. And that is in many ways testament to the work that Viv did as our chair for nearly 4 years and as a council member for nearly 10 years. So thank you very much, Viv. I'd also like to thank right now Lucy, who is still in the room, I think, from Lloyd's, for allowing us to use their building tonight. It's greatly appreciated. It's very generous, and we appreciate it very much. I think it's actually an example of a slight change in focus for Manx Wildlife Trust, looking to engage people here in Douglas and in Onchan, who typically have felt quite distant from what we do, our reserves and our visitor centres and so on. So it's a slight change in focus, and it comes also at a time when we're seeing more and more interest from corporate organisations in Douglas to spend their money supporting what we are trying to do. So it's this, being here in this building is a symbol of a slight change in culture, which I hope is going to be more and more successful over the next few years. I also want to thank Foraging Vintners for sponsoring us and supplying the drink that we've just had upstairs.
Have a copy of the law.
I'd also like to thank Graham for organising the weather and everything else this evening. Now, normally I would be, this is Sophie Pierce, our Secretary and Member of Council. Normally I'd also have up here our Treasurer to present our accounts and our CEO to present his report. That isn't the case. I'll explain why. Lee is probably looking at me right now through his binoculars from over there, but he has tested positive for COVID a few days ago, so he's fine. He's fine. But he's on the screen, and as I said, we could almost shout to each other across the face. So Lee's going to be, is joining us on screen. The only bonus is he was slightly worried that his presentation might be too long. So I said, well, if it is, I'll just switch it off. I also said normally we'd have our treasurer here. Opportunity also for me to thank Paul Seawood. Paul isn't here, but Paul was treasurer for us for 6 years, up until the end of the last financial year, the end of January. And before that was treasurer for our subsidiary Wildlife Limited for over 20 years. So he was kind of like one of the all-time greats in terms of the longevity of service for this charity. So he was a fantastic treasurer. He stepped down, and great thanks to him for all his work, particularly the last couple of years, which were actually quite tricky, all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah. When I became chair, we didn't have a treasurer, and I was rather hoping that a member would simply step forward, present themselves with fantastic qualifications, who was enthusiastic and brilliantly well qualified. And it happened. So we have a new treasurer. So Anthony Boyd, I can't say Anthony's here somewhere. Anthony, whose current role is Director of Finance at Douglas Corporation, has been a member for a couple of years. He stepped forward, and that's fantastic. So thank you, Anthony. And that's it. Yeah, done anything, you know. But next year he'll be here. He's actually taking Elvis as treasurer tomorrow, and that was deliberate because obviously he wasn't going to be here to present accounts today. So our accounts will, Lee in his presentation will talk about our financial results, and he'll be doing that in a moment. Just so that you know, after I've spoken, Lee will do his presentation. Then we'll go on to the formal part of the meeting at the end, which is the agenda. So yes, if anybody has questions on the accounts, Lee will hopefully be able to answer those when he takes questions when he's finished his piece. And I'm able to help on that too. Before I pass on to Lee, I just want to make a couple of comments generally. So I mentioned I was at a conference in Kent actually about 6 weeks ago for chairs and CEOs. And it was a fantastic experience learning about how well we are regarded within the wildlife trust movement. I think there are 46 or 47 wildlife trusts representing all the counties of England and Scotland and Northern Ireland and Alderney. So we're one of the little ones, but we are fantastically well regarded. I also want to say the charity that sits above all the wildlife trusts, the Royal Society for the Wildlife Trusts, the RSWT, is providing fantastic national leadership as well, I would say. We have a fantastic chief executive, Craig Bennett, who I met, and you may have seen his name in the national media a lot recently, really playing a leading role, representing us and all of the other wildlife trusts on national campaigning and commenting on goings on nationally. And that's a brilliant leadership we're getting, I think, at the moment from RSWT. And I think he's going to be here next year, actually, which is something to look forward to. When I was interviewed to take on the role as chair, I was asked what I thought about Matt's Wildlife Trust, and basically what I said was, I think it's a fantastic charity. It's doing brilliant things. We've got great leadership with Lee and his team. We've got a fantastic set of ecologists and other staff in our office. Our reserves are wonderful, and we're going to increase the number of reserves. Our financial situation is good. We've got great relationships with government. So everything is perfect, but not perfect, but is good. And we should be very proud of that, as should Viv and Paul and the others who've been on council for many years. However, we must look above that situation to the wider world. And this is what I said is, actually, we shouldn't be complacent. Only last week, we saw the highest ever temperatures recorded in the UK. Only this week, we saw records of melting glaciers in the Alps. You know, climate change is hitting us every single day. It will affect nature all over the world and here, and it's a crisis. And even now, as we speak, there's another unfolding crisis with the bird flu affecting seabird populations across Britain. And I was in the northeast of Scotland at Tiwi, walking on the beach in a place on the Murray coast, and it was absolutely devastating seeing the dead gannets. And I saw it again yesterday on Black Beach. So it's bad. It's bad. But the reason I mention this is not to be gloomy, but just to say our work is as important and urgent as it's ever been. And support of our members is as important as it's ever been. And we'll carry on. And I'm very positive with the organisation, but we must lose sight of the fact that we are in a crisis, and what we're doing has never been more important. So I'm now going to hand over to Lee, I hope. And Lee's report is really about the financial year which ended in January of this year, but he'll also be touching on what's happening now and hopefully in the near future. So Lee.
Hopefully you can hear me. I'll trust Graham to do the volume. I'm so sorry I'm not there. I do have 2 red lines on a little plastic thing, and I still got 2 red lines, so I'm afraid I'm at home isolating. But I feel fine. I've got no symptoms. Thank you very much for attending. Graham's told me that we've almost got a full house there. I'm actually enjoying Lloyd's Bank technology because I can currently see about 4 different screens. So every time someone moves or says something, I suddenly get a zoom in on different people. So it's quite an experience from this end. My report now is going to be a summary of the activity in the reporting year, which dovetails with the financial year, which was the 1st of February 21 up to the 31st of January this year. But there are a couple of additions I'll give as what I would say things that we want you to know about beyond the 31st of January this year. I think Graham's got a few printed copies of this afterwards, and then we'll put the full report on the website tomorrow with the recording of this and the financials if you haven't seen it already. So in summary, I think this was 21-22, another really interesting, quite unusual with COVID and other things, but ultimately very progressive year for Manx Wildlife Trust, in which we've grown again significantly. And governance, so it was a good year financially. Our income rose from 388,000 in the previous year to just over 500,000 in 21-22, and that major increase was really down to 2 things. One was the fact that we took on the agri-environment delivery contract with DEFA, and that's worth about 63,000 a year to us. And we also got an anonymous donation of 50k. Our overall surplus was about 65,000. So, you know, if you think back 2 or 3 years, we were trading in the red, and we've now had 2 good years in the black, where we've managed to add some reserves to our fund as well as expanding. So I think financially we're there. One of the things that I think is the best indicator of our finances, and I'm probably speaking to our new treasurer in waiting as when I say this as well, is that we have a very, very broad portfolio of income streams. I used to have a good friend that sold strawberries to Marks and Spencer's, and that's all he did. And when they said they didn't want them anymore, he went bust. And I think one of our strengths as a charity is that we have a very, very broad portfolio ranging from the shop to consultancy to government contracts, etc., etc. So a healthy position to be in. In terms of our COVID, well, it did impact negatively. That would be wrong to say it didn't, but I'll be positive. And I think the most positive things that came out of COVID for us was the development of a very strong set of digital skills and flexible working in our team. And, you know, something that Graham says is that we're an agile organisation. And I think our digital learning through COVID has been a real plus for us. Our strategy that we wrote in May 20 during the first lockdown focuses and continues to focus on 3 pillars: a nature recovery network, brackets biodiversity, nature-based solutions, brackets making nature work for people, and also mitigating climate change. And then the 3rd pillar is engaging people to help us in everything that we do. And these are the three pillars that we developed in May after I'd been to a Wildlife Trust event. And these are now the 3 pillars that have been completely endorsed in the whole of the Wildlife Trust Federation strategy that was launched about 2 months ago. So we're on point with that. The one thing I would say in terms of strategy is that this year, towards this year, and certainly before we get to our 50th anniversary in next year, one of my key targets working with the team is to develop a much more detailed plan around our 3 strategic pillars, so we can actually get ourselves even more focus and get ourselves some measurable impact measures going forward. So that's a key target going forward for me and the team. 8 new trustees were appointed to council during the year. We commenced our search for a new chair and treasurer. We restructured the committees under council. We've got ourselves new patrons in His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor Sir John Lorimer and his wife, who are extremely engaged, and more of that in next year's report, but they're fantastic. We did discover that we should have been VAT registered back in 2018, and there was a tidying up exercise to do, which did have a significant cost in the year. But again, we absorbed that within the accounts and still came out well. But we're now in a strong position in terms of VAT. Both the charity and our trading arm are VAT registered, and we now have a group VAT scheme. We also looked at our accounts more widely, and we commissioned a company called Number One Accounts to do us a review back in December. They did this. Subsequently, we've changed our accounts software package to one now that is frankly transformational. We've also gone through a whole period of tidying up everything within our accounts. This was synchronous with actually our accounts administrator, Charlotte, left us in January. So that was an opportunity to look at what we did, and we took the decision then to actually appoint Number One Accounts as an external accounting contractor, if you like, that's delivering our accounts. Now that's under review. Actually, we agreed that they would be in place until the AGM, so we're looking to review that over the next few months coming. But the quality of where we are now and the actual cost of it are both great steps forward for us. So I think our finances are tidy. Brackets, I'm speaking to the new treasurer as well. We did a carbon audit of our work. Graham led that, and we took a delivery of a new electric vehicle. So sustainability of ourselves starts at home, and we took some really good steps forward this year in that strand. 2 new people joined the team: David Bellamy, more about later, and Laura Strand as our administrator. And Laura again has been fundamental in helping us progress the office administration, tidiness, etc. We launched a revised staff appraisal process and revised staff handbook, health and safety and safeguarding policies. We're also just supporting local Manx people. Our communications assistant, Rachel, we're actually sponsoring her through a master's remote learning at Edinburgh Napier University, and Ray's now just completed the first year of her master's in conservation. And we've been developing other local talent. We've actually had an intern who's finishing a placement with us tomorrow, and we had interns from the DFE with us last summer. So really important that we develop local Manx people for the future. In wider partnership working, myself and Viv, and now Simon, as he's mentioned, very much contribute to the wider Wildlife Trust's strategy development, partnership working, etc. And there is a real advantage to us in doing that. We're part of the wider federation, be it funding, knowledge transfer, etc. There's a huge weight there that we can dip into, and that we do. Great working relationships across the Isle of Man government, most notably with DEFA. We had really good meetings with the CEO and the senior people prior or during PERDA, prior to the elections, and then subsequently with the new minister and MHK's post-election. We continue to champion the biosphere status. I'm actually personally on a small team that's been asked to review the biosphere prior to its 10-year review date. And we champion it in everything we do now. And you know, everything Graham and his team are doing is engagement. We're proud to partner biosphere. And I think it's really important because it almost in some ways summarises everything we're trying to do as an island. We further strengthened our relationship with the Manx National Farmers Union, and that's fundamentally important to us in the agri-environment scheme, which I'll come on to. In terms of Manx National Heritage, we were given a 12-month contract extension to run the Calf of Man. We had hoped for a longer partnership agreement. Change of directors always mean that things need to be looked at by organisations in a different way. So we're still in for the Calf, and we're expecting that to be re-tendered very, very soon. And we're positive about tendering for it and hopefully maintaining our role in running the bird observatory in the long term. We've had quite positive discussions also with the property developer, Hertford Homes, about how we might encourage them to do development better. And most exciting on that is that we're in conversations now, pre-mandated consultancy, where we can actually go in. And today I've actually gone back with an email where they're commissioning us to actually go in and work with them on designing the plants for the gardens that they're putting around development work. So this isn't things that they have to do for planning. This is them wanting to do it better. So again, early days, baby steps, but a positive development. We'll also continue to be part of the UK Overseas Territories Conservation Forum, which links Crown dependencies and all the UCOTs together. And in that forum, we're one of the biggest players. So in the Wildlife Trust, as Simon said, we're one of the smaller ones. But in terms of St Helena, Ascension, Antigua, British Virgin Islands, etc., we're actually one of the most wealthy, well-populated, and with high talent rates. So we can be definitely a leader in those small island fields. In terms of membership and engagement, we had our desk and DEFA contract renewed for another year, and brackets post this into this year now. We're delighted that through the support from DEFA and desk, and I think I saw Richard in the audience, we've now secured a 5 or 3 year plus a potential 2-year contract for us to deliver the education, and that's a fantastic reward for Dawn personally, who's the person leading our education delivery. And I think I'd also like to highlight at this point that we and Dawn were recipients of the UNESCO Biosphere Education Award during the reporting year. And I think although it's awarded for delivery in a year, I think it really for us shows it's a pat on the back for Dawn and the thousands and thousands of people she's inspired about Manx nature. So that was a real landmark for us last year in terms of our engagement. We've also expanded our adult education. So we launched 3 new adult education programs last year: wildlife gardening, wildlife observing, and a magnificent meadows course. And interestingly, the Wildlife Trust now, I'm in conversation with them about them potentially using our models is something that they're going to develop and roll out across the whole of the Wildlife Trust Federation. So you can't currently do a Wildlife Trust course anywhere. And so the vision of being able to go and do a Wildlife Trust course in wildlife gardening in Nottinghamshire or Scotland, etc., is something that Craig Bennett and the Wildlife Trust Central team now are quite excited about. Digital's interesting. Again, Graham and his team done fantastic with that. Everything from the magazine to videos, social media through Ray, brilliant. I think for me, one of the notable points during the reporting year was the elms in St Mark's. And I think that for the whole of the team, including me, was I wouldn't say it was a shock. I think it was a shock for some, but it was certainly a massive flashing light in terms of the power of social media and the impact that can have. And I think what it taught me, and I'm sure others in the team, is that when Manx Wildlife Trust go out with a story that we want people to know about nature, people listen to us and it can have traction. And I think it showed me that 2 things. One is that we need to be very careful when we do that. I know Graham agrees that, it's a card we have, but we want to play it carefully. And the other learning from that was that you need to campaign with kindness. And interestingly, recently I had a similar conversation with 2 of our friends at Maxwell and Dolphin Watch at the Festival of the Sea about a similar incident recently with jet skis, where they actually felt that the dolphins were following the jet skis, and yet the people on the jet skis have been death threats and dreadful things. So I think the elm trees was a landmark moment in the last year for us. Also, in terms of digital, we managed to get Dave Goldson after 2 efforts, or 3 efforts of trying to get him. He did an online talk for us, and we also did our first hybrid talk. So with Dr. Lara Howe and the CARF team, with the Northern volunteers in Ramsey, we actually had a packed house in Ramsey, and we had a live stream through Zoom like this. So we've done our few in terms of hybrid. I think the exciting bit for me is, around people and community is, again, as Simon's alluded to, the Douglas, the Onken, the big populations. And how do we do that? Well, although it's officially in this year, I did say I'd drop an odd thing in beyond January. And we engaging more with the community and actually empowering. The key word here is empowering community to take positive action for nature. We've managed to get 3 completely funded new posts that will enable us to do that in a way that Manx Wildlife Trust has never been able to do that before. The first one is an artist in residence And I'd been involved in artists in residence when I was in Edinburgh Botanical Garden, and like them, and we bidded to the Arts Council and they funded. So we've got a fantastic artist in residence, Claire Payne, and she's already starting to engage in different ways. We're in Lloyd's Bank now, and Lucy, thank you. You've done a fantastic way of connecting us for many years, and I think that graph's spiking now in terms of, you know, our AGM where it is now, and also the fact that Lloyd's Bank have fully funded a community ranger for 2 years with us. That's Hannah Phillips, and Hannah's hit the ground running, and very confident now, touch wood, that we're going to get community involvement, and a greener Douglas and Oncombe Wetlands is going to become the community space that we'd hoped, etc., etc. And really then trying to find out where communities want to be helped and empowered to take action. So that's really exciting. And then the third post that we're currently recruiting for is funded by the Central Wildlife Trust team, and that's for a Team Wilder coordinator. Team Wilder is the term that's put across all this pillar of public engagement, and the wildlife trusts have got funding from the central lottery. We bypass that because of our Crown dependency status, but in terms of their levelling up, they're funded us from their central core. So we're currently recruiting again for another 2-year post to do that. Now that's all wonderful, and I don't want to pour water on it, but you know, the chats with me and Graham, we've got 3 posts there, but they're all time limited. So one of the challenges remains for us is just to generally raise the bar and find ways that we can sustain those posts in the long term. But it really does give us an opportunity to engage with the masses, and it's going to be exciting. Biodiversity impact. I've mentioned Nature Recovery Network and nature-based solutions. I think, well, no, I'm certain that for me, for the Wildlife Trust, the biggest step this year has been the Agri-Environment Scheme. Some of you will know that my background, I've got an undergrad and postgrad in crop production and marketing and international horticulture. So I'm not going to suggest I'm a poacher turned gamekeeper, but I can certainly have a sensible conversation with growers and farmers. And I think for me, the whole concept of landscape scale recovery, the Isle of Man, depending on the statistics you look at, 72 to 88% of the island is agriculture. And our nature reserves are 0.3% of the island. So our nature reserves are fantastic, and they're very important, and they remain the core of what we do. And that is genuine. That's the reason they're bullet point 1 in our strategy. But the potential impact now of being able to influence, you know, 70 to 80% of the island through the Agri-Environment Scheme, we have the key to the door. We have the key to the door now, and you know, we've got a fantastic Agri-Environment officer in David, supported by Laura and Andre and Trish and others in the team. And actually, my world now is not one of celebrating the fact that we're doing this, but saying, hang on a minute, we actually could do with 2 or 3 Agri-Environment officers, because we can't possibly get to every farm. And what difference could we make as a wildlife trust if we had 3 Davids? Or, well, we won't get 3 Davids, we're not like it, but 3 Agri-Environment officers who could go in and get to every farm, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and help them with reducing their carbon footprint or enhancing biodiversity. Imagine the impact we can have in the Isle of Man for nature if we can really influence some of those farmers. Even if we only got to 10, 20, 30% of them, think of the wealth of land that we could influence. So that is a massive step forward for nature recovery. Early days, but we have the key to the door. Other things around Nature Recovery Network, the partnership project that we're developing with DEFA through Richard and his team, and Joe Overty at Biosphere, to actually get more people and community engaged. And there's an app in line for production that will enable people to upload their gardens, their verges, their own little meadows into an Isle of Man digital map. And we have a fantastic digital map. And I think that's one way we're better than what they've got across, because our digital map that the Isle of Man government have, the environment map's brilliant. And again, through work from David and others, we've now got a layer of Manx Wildlife Trust nature reserves on there. Wildlife sites are coming. You can look at ASSIs, registered trees. Imagine if you could look at agri-environment of a certain level. Imagine if it was habitat creation in agri-environment, there was a layer on the map for that as well. Or you could get your gardens uploaded and they were self-assessed. So that we've got the right tool to measure our nature recovery network, and we're going to look at different ways to expand that. Biological data collection is fundamentally important to us. You know, we want to know the baseline. Not funded into agri-environment scheme for collecting biological data, because rightly we're using proven methodologies that have been used in other places, and you can draw the conclusion that if farmers are doing X and Y, it's a benefit to nature. But as a wildlife trust, we want to measure the birds and the flora and the butterflies, and we want to know if these numbers are expanding. And so we really are now in the point where we've got to collect baseline data. If we get 10 years into an agri-environment scheme, it's too late. So we're looking at ways, and we've got some funding from DEFRA, and we're planning 2 farmer courses this year to upskill them in bird observation and get them collecting data. We've recruited for a national butterfly coordinator, and we're looking at transects. So getting data for agri-environment is important. It's not just terrestrial. Dr. Lara Howe's done a fantastic job as taking on the coordinator of Sea Search for Isle of Man, and that's the citizen science programme that collects marine data through scuba divers. Lara's run a couple of observer courses now. We've got programmes doing around collecting evidence, observer forms of flying in, seagrass dives, etc. So Lara's done a fantastic job with that, and we hope to really inspire more people to get more data from our marine environment. We've also started collecting birds information, and I saw Andrew on one of my multiple screen cameras. So Andrew Johnson's done some great bird data collection on our nature reserves, and we also last year asked Aaron, when he wasn't on the calf, to do a full winter bird survey of all the nature reserves. And I think that again, for us, and certainly for me, is that we want to maximise the opportunities that we've got within our own nature reserves, because they're really important, and we want to know more about them. So be it birds, the invert group that Dawn runs with Kate and Steve Crellin and others, fantastic. So real opportunity. I think I can say I've not got the letter yet, but we're actually won the contract to be the delivery partner for the Manx Biodiversity Recording Partnership, which will still keep Philippa Tomlinson involved. Many of you will know Philippa, who's a good egg. We like Philippa. But we've also got the potential now to recruit, if you like, an apprentice for Philippa 1 day a week and get the data flow going more. So that's really exciting. I'm nearly done, Simon, don't switch me off. Commercial operations, our ecological consultancy offer developed. The income was actually down by about 12k on the previous year, but if you looked at the graph over a 5-year period, we're still going the right way, and this year the consultancy income has gone up significantly. So I think it was a blip last year. It's not just about the money. I say this on every opportunity, and I'll say it again at the AGM. For us, the biggest advantage of delivering ecological consultancy is the fact that we get our Manx ecologists, Manx-based, giving advice on projects for development in the Isle of Man. And that has to be better for the Isle of Man than flying in ecologists from Manchester or Liverpool or Birmingham or London, because we've got people that know the island who are giving best advice for nature. And if we then get money out of it, that allows us to fund other programs as well. I think that's a double win. There is a governance issue, and we have agreed that we're going to move our consultancy into the trading arm. But overall, for the wider charity, it gives us a really good impact. The shop's gone from strength to strength. We never thought we'd replace Rachel Hartnell, and maybe we never will. But Ansley Plowman stepped into the breach as our buyer. And last year, even in the second COVID year, the dividend went up by about 5k last year, paid into the charity. And that the money that those volunteers just in the shop alone are generating, if you add in those in the Nature Discovery Centre's North and South groups with fundraising, that's now enabling us to take some really big steps forward, look at buying more land, etc. So it's really valuable to us. So finally, how can I sum up? Well, I'll probably give hopefully a flavour of the year. I think we're going to allow questions, and I'd very much welcome questions. We are looking now in terms of at new bits of land. I'm not going to put the jinx on it, but we're close to purchasing another, what the ecologists tell me is a really important piece of land in the island that needs to be banked for nature. And what we are hoping is that is a strong indicator to members that although we're talking about landscape scale, working with others, working with developers, working with farmers, getting more people involved, the core is that if a precious piece of land comes up, as a wildlife trust, we still feel it's a priority for us to buy it, bank it, and conserve it in the long term. So it's not one or the other, which we're aiming to do both. there is lots to do. I think the plan will be a key piece to give us that focus, and it's an exciting time ahead, we believe. Thank you. I think that's enough on a summary, but time permitting, I'd love questions.
Hi Lee, it's Stacey. Lee, John Bryant, can you spot me? How does it work? Nor can you hear me.
I can just about hear you. It's faint, but I can hear you. If everyone else is quiet, the camera will find you, I think.
Be silent. Lee, you mentioned you're on a biosphere steering group, for want of a better title. What would make our biosphere status in danger?
That's a good question. I'll try and give a short answer. I think the first thing I would say to that is that biosphere does not mean perfection. Everything I've been told and read indicates to me that we'd have to do something quite catastrophic in the first 10 years to lose our biosphere status. But I'm hoping, and I strongly advocate, that we shouldn't be complacent in that. I think something that if we had a complete ecological disaster, or we decided that we weren't not going to progress with such things as agri-environments, or we were just going to build masses of unsustainable housing, I think big items like that could bring it into threat. But I think it's not perfect, and I think the main thing is that we're showing progress. So yes, probably the short answer is anything catastrophic or a clear decline in what we're doing. As long as we're not declining, and as long as we don't do anything catastrophic, I don't believe we'll lose the biosphere status.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm going to be greedy then, Lee. Are you with me, Lee?
Yes, be nice.
Where? No, why should I be nice? It's iron, very smart. Lee, when you negotiate for the land, which is so important, which I've been involved with across many years ago, can you say who you use? Do you use it? Do you do it in-house? Which I doubt.
When you say
negotiation,
when you, as in negotiating to buy land, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. I'm not the most widely experienced person in buying land. So in the current case, we've used expertise from the board. We've also used the agent who's working for the vendor. So I'd say we've used expertise on the board going through a vendor to have that negotiation.
We haven't got an agent who acts for us. It's because it does require a degree of expertise and considerable experience with land.
That's a good point. We don't have an agent that acts for us, and I would say that that's something that you immediately say resonates, and that would be something that I think we should look at. We don't have an agent now.
I'm happy to talk to you about that separately.
Thank you.
Not sure that came across.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure I came across.
You've made notes. Thank you.
Any other questions? Also, if anybody's got any questions on the accounts or the finances, this is a time to ask about that as well. We're going to come on to the formal agendas in a moment, which will include approval of the accounts. Now is the time to ask if anybody has any questions on that.
You can still hear it. The screen had gone to sleep, so I need to reconnect. Bear with me.
Don't ask me.
I can still hear you. can you still hear me?
Yes.
Well, if there are no other questions at all for Lee, I will move on with the meeting. So thank you, Lee, for your summary of the year. Well done, thank you. And well done to all your team as well for the years. Right, I'll now move on to the formal part of the agenda, which is what we printed off. And just, it is a money saving effort, as simple as that. We are not printing everything off and posting it anymore. Our articles that we adopted at the last AGM enable us to do everything by email. So that is what we will do if we can. So the documents, the minutes of our last AGM and our financial statements have all been posted on our website. So I hope you've had a chance to look at them. We have got a few copies printed off if anybody had a particular one wanted to read them again now, which I think Graham's got, but I'm going to move on straight away. So our first item is to approve the minutes of our last AGM, which were held on the 7th of October of last year. Is everybody in favour of approving the minutes? Yeah. Anybody against? No, sir. That's approved. Thank you. So our second item is to approve the annual accounts for the year ended 31st of January 2022. Now, before I go on, I'll let you know these were posted on the website before our auditor, Moore Stevens, had signed off on them. During that audit process, which has been going on over the last few weeks, there have been a few changes to the text in the document, but I think to the actual figures, there's been no changes. The latest version has actually been on the website for the last few days. So if anybody had any questions, do shout. Otherwise, I'm going to ask, does everybody vote in favour of approving our accounts for the year ended 31st of January? All in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against? No, thank you very much. Next, I see our agenda is strangely numbered, isn't it? Next item on the agenda is to approve the reappointment of Moore Stevens as our auditors, and their remuneration in such terms as should be approved by council. I hasten to add, this is a formality. We always approve the reappointment. I hasten to add, it doesn't stop council appointing different auditors, and it's a possibility, but we do seek your approval to reappoint them. All in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? No. Thank you. So that's approved. Next item, before I take this, I want to tell you there's been a change to this since we issued the notice for two different reasons. So this resolution reaffirms, I should explain, council members are actually not appointed by you, the members, they're appointed by council. However, whenever we do appoint somebody, they have to be then reapproved at the following general meeting. And then in addition to those people who've been appointed by council since the last general meeting, by rotation, other members are also re-elected. Now, when we issued the notice of the meeting a month ago, we actually made a mistake, and we forgot to mention Keir Powell-Lewis, who was appointed by council on the 6th of December. So I apologise, that was a mistake in the notice. However, he has to be subject to reappointment by you. So the first person to reappoint is Keir. Now, I'll mention his details have actually been on our website for 6 months, but I'll tell you, Keir's actually based in London. He's one of our two council members who doesn't live on the Isle of Man, but he's a regular visitor. His partner is Max, and he works, I'm afraid I can't tell you his employer at the moment, but his career is in museums and in public engagement. And he's a fantastic resource for us. He's massively enthusiastic and works with Graham and with Lee quite closely helping them on public engagement, funding bids, that type of thing. He's a real asset. He actually applied to be a trustee earlier, but we ran out of spaces in accordance with our articles. So as soon as we were able to, we appointed him, and he's been a council member since December. So I will shortly be asking you to appoint Keir Powell-Lewis's appointment, to approve his appointment. The next name on the list is Magnus Greenabach. Magnus is here. Magnus, we appointed quite recently, although he came onto the board of Wildlife Limited about 6 months ago, and he's the chair of our subsidiary Wildlife Limited, and he's already having a great impact on managing that company. In fact, only a couple of days ago, he organised a really nice and successful social gathering for all of our shop volunteers, and I think everybody's delighted that he's helping to run that side of the charity's activities. And his background is in the corporate world, gaming. So he brings also great contact in the potential corporate members to support us. So that's Magnus. And then the third name on the list is Anthony, our new treasurer, who formerly was appointed by council just a couple of days ago. I've already mentioned he'll be appointed as treasurer as of tomorrow. So those are the three people we've appointed since our annual general meeting in October. And I would ask you to approve and reaffirm their appointments. So I don't think, do I need proposers and seconders? I don't think we do. I don't think we do.
You did last time, but
I don't think we
I don't
do.
think we need to.
So I'll run through each in turn. All in favour of reappointing Keir Powell-Lewis? Thank you. And anybody against? No, thank you. And next, Magnus Greenabach. All in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against? And finally, Anthony Boyd, our new treasurer. All in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against? No. Thank you. So I now move on to the final section, which is reappointing longer serving council members who today have to retire by rotation and offer themselves to re-election. And they are Kim Etherton and Rachel Glover. Both are here. All in favour of reappointing Kim? Thank you very much. Anybody against? No. And all in favour of reappointing Rachel? All in favour? Any against? Thank you. That concludes the formal part of the AGM. Thank you very much. And I'll now formally close the meeting. Thank you.